Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello. In the last lecture we discussed the importance of the community development and the strategies to encourage the community development at the planning level, at the operational level, at the control level and also design level. So today we will have the discussion on the cooperative housing. So before we go to the details of the today's lecture, let us quickly recap the few points which we discussed. The community development is very important in a new housing areas because without the community the housing does not fulfill its objective of fulfilling the shelter need of the people, number one. Number two, the investment of the resource and the finance is not fulfilled, and number three, without the community the social security and the next generation is not formed properly, and for this reason we have to encourage the community interaction and social interaction by efficient planning and the design and the operation of the housing areas. So for that we discussed various methodologies, like in planning level we can promote cooperative housing, institutional housing, or at the planning level we can use the spatial plan which can encourage the social interaction or social mixing. Those kind of methodology we discussed last day. So today we will discuss the cooperative housing and how it can enhance the community development, and also it can offer a very good option for the affordable housing. So cooperative housing is basically a housing typology which is developed by the housing cooperatives. In plotted housing you have seen that plotted housing is the major source of the housing for the low or the medium income group households in all the Indian cities. So those are constructed by the house owners itself. In the group housing you will find that the private developers or the public developer, they are developing the housing, but here the housing cooperative, which is nothing but the group of people having similar social, economic, cultural background, and which is formed spontaneously under some legislation. Now two thing is very important. You can see the combination of the people which is coming from a common background. It can be social background, like say language, or the religious background. It can be economic background or maybe cultural background, and they can form from their own cohesion spontaneously, and which can be registered, which can be streamlined through the legislation. So cooperative housing societies acts or rules and regulations, these are framed at the state level, state government level, to ensure the right of the cooperative member, to ensure the process, to ensure the mechanism of the cooperative registration, and to mechanism of the cooperative housing and other cooperative societies formation and its workings. In this type of housing, the land and the common facilities belong to the cooperative, because the cooperative is the developer, they are arranging the money, they are developing the projects. So land and common facilities belong to cooperative, like the group housing. In group housing we have seen that the common facilities belong to the community or the residence association, not the individual owner. Similarly here also the cooperative as a whole owns the land and the facilities, and the apartment belong to individual. If the housing cooperative makes a plotted development, in that sense the individual plots will be owned by the people, but the common facilities like the road or the open space or the community center, everything will be owned by the housing cooperative. Now let us discuss how the process of cooperative housing happens, or what are the basic process how the cooperative housing is constructed or delivered. The first stage of the cooperative housing is the formation of the cooperative. That means as we discussed before in the earlier slide, that many people, some group of people, they can form a cooperative from their own initiative. It is not that the government is imposing something or any private agency is imposing something. It is their own initiative by which they can form a cooperative or a community. Yes, the size, number and the formation criteria can be given by the government. So, that is the first stage. The second stage is the registration under government department and declaration with the signatories. Now, since it is a spontaneous initiative from the people, it has to be registered with the government under the state cooperative housing acts, rules and regulations, and after the registration it becomes a registered cooperative housing society. Now, once it is registered, then they will be eligible to apply for the purchase of the land. So, next stage they can apply for the land to the either state government authorities or to the private developer or to the from the market they can purchase the land. Through the process land could be allotted to the cooperatives, because since they are registered through the state government acts and rules and regulation, any state housing policy, any state housing provision, it may be a plotted housing, it may be a group housing, those could be allotted to that particular cooperative based on the state legislation or the state policy. If the state governments they want to encourage the cooperative housing, they can definitely allocate or provide that particular housing to the cooperative, but in a transparent manner. Once the land is allotted, then the infrastructure will be developed by the developer or the housing developer, which can be private and public both, and the cooperative they can prepare design and drawing with the help of the architect. So, the next part will be to create a planning and design. Now, here the difference is, in every group housing you as a end user are never entering into the design or the planning preparation process, because at that stage the developer deals with the architect, but here you are the client, you are the owner and you are the end user. Therefore, you are making your design brief, you are approaching to the architect and the planner as well, and you are making their your own requirement, and you are facilitating your design process, and time to time you can provide your inputs to improve the design, so that you get the maximum benefit of the design as per your freedom, as per your requirement. So, that is a very important part, and which is much different than the group housing design process. The next part is the construction. Now, the cooperative can construct their house themselves with their own people or with their own resources, definitely, but sometimes with their own resources like finance and manpower, they can appoint or they can appoint separate contractor or the people or the agencies to construct the projects, because if the cooperative is very big, it may not be possible to construct the building by their own members. After the construction is over, then they can occupy the project through the statutory methods, like say occupancy certificates and the completion certificates has to be issued, and after that their job will be to operate and maintain. So, this is maintenance of the housing cooperative. Now, this is the general process, but it can vary from state to state or from geographic areas to geographic areas. It is a general process where the formation of the cooperative or the community happens at the beginning, and the construction and the occupancy comes in the last. In the other new housing areas developed by the private developer, maybe the group housing or the plotted housing, it is just reverse. You develop, you construct, then the people come there and occupy the houses. Now, why we promote the cooperative housing? Though we mention briefly, but let us see what are the reason we promote cooperative housing. The first and foremost reason is that the community formation. In the last lecture we discussed the community building is very important part for any housing development, and in privately developed group housing or privately developed new housing areas, community development takes 30 to 40 years, but here in cooperative housing, community is already developed. They are the builder, they are the decision maker of their design. So, here the community formation does not take additional time from the construction or the inception of the project. The second part is the less numbers of transaction. As an authority, as a planning authority, if you provide a plotted housing and you provide individual plots to individual members or individual persons, you have to transact through each member or each owner. But here in this cooperative housing, if you promote cooperatives, then you have to transact with one cooperative only, whereas within the cooperative they can have the transaction with their own members. So, therefore, from the administrative point, from the governance point, it reduces the number of transaction for the authority, that therefore, it is very much convenient and effective in from the perspective of the governance. Next is that it also ensures high density. So, because it is a large group it is not one or two persons. So, it ensures the density, the more the density, more the compactness, more the social interaction, and so density can be achieved in cooperative housing. Fourth is the affordable option. Why it is more affordable? Because in privately developed houses or housing projects, the developers develops the projects, they construct the projects keeping in the mind that they need to have some amount of profit. So, after keeping the profit, they will sell the house to the market, and the price, the final price what you are paying as a end user, which consists the construction cost, the project cost, as well as the profit element which is going directly to the developer. But here, since you are the developer, you are the end user, you are constructing your own house, here there is no profit element in the whole pricing structure. So, the price is just exactly equal to your construction cost, number one. Secondly, the cooperative plots usually are given in a subsidized cost or in a break even cost by the government. So, at the same time you are reducing the price, you are reducing the cost of the construction because there is no profit element, and you are monitoring the project, you are overseeing the project. So, administrative cost is also reduced, and secondly you are reducing the cost because you are getting the plot from the government, sometimes usually at a subsidized cost. From both the angle, from land and building, the cooperative housing becomes one of the greatest affordable housing options. It also creates the community. That is why cooperative housing is much encouraged. The last and the very important part is the transparency and the sense of ownership. In a privately developed group housing, you just get the final product and you pay the price for that. Depending on the market options, depending on the choices or whatever the projects and the units are available, you can pay and you can get the house. But here, but in that process you do not have the transparent mechanism by way you can monitor the project execution, you can monitor its sanctioning process or any decision making process. But here in this mechanism, the whole process is transparent because you are the decision maker, you are the developer, and you are the end user, and you are the client of the project. So, that is why the whole process is transparent, and since you are involved from the inception to the construction or the occupancy stage, there is a strong sense of ownership like the privately built plotted house. Similarly, with the plotted house, here also you develop a sense of ownership, and because of the sense of ownership there is a strong attachment with the community, strong attachment with the building and the land. That is why cooperative housing is much more important in our housing strategy. Now, let us see some example. We mentioned this example of the New Town Kolkata few lectures back also. Now, let us discuss some of the strategic or the policy options which was exercised in this New Town. Now, out of all development, 80% of the household belong to group housing as a policy by the government. To achieve the compact development, to achieve the more density, 80% of the households were allowed to make group housing. Now, out of the all group housing, 50% of the total group housing was allotted to the cooperatives. So, objective was that to create more housing, compact housing, more density, and within that also to create community, more cooperative housing, but in different variety. Now let us see what are the varieties. Now there were various types of varieties. The first variety was the small cooperatives. It was 8 to 12 members, 8 to 12 members, and after the small cooperative there are medium and the large cooperatives having 32 members, 64 members and 128 members. Now what is the objective for making small, big, medium and the large cooperatives? The objective is that the small cooperatives like 8 member or 10 members will enable the like minded people who may be a spontaneous friend, who may be school friend, who may be working in the same place, who may be staying in the same place, they can form their cooperative, apply for the housing or the land and get the housing. The objective of the large and the medium cooperatives can be both, like medium cooperative can serve the spontaneously developed housing community, and the large cooperative they actually basically serve the cooperatives from under the institutions or the offices, like say there could be large cooperative of any corporate house or any public sector undertaking. So large cooperative, medium cooperative and the small cooperative all are formed or given priority keeping in the mind of the community development, but at the various levels. Now you can see there are various sizes of the small cooperatives. The smallest size 270 square meter belongs to the lower income group, the medium size 335 square meter belong to the middle income group, and the larger size 400 square meter belong to the higher income group. So you can have a variety of the plot options, variety of the plot sizes and its shapes to bring the variety and the community in the cooperative housing. So these are the areas. The yellow areas are the residential areas. We will see just one example of a residential sector and its location of the cooperative housing, how the cooperative housing were situated. This is a typical sector of this particular case study. These two are the areas for the residential use. These dark yellow areas which is kept at the periphery of any neighborhood is provided for the cooperative, mostly the small cooperative and medium cooperatives, and the internal yellow areas which is nothing but the small plots which may be private plots or private plots for the higher income group or middle income group. So you can see that the peripheral plots which is lying at the edge of larger roads are basically cooperative plot at every. So as a strategy, as a planning strategy, it was conceived that if we provide the cooperative plot at the periphery and individual plot at the center, there could be more interaction in terms of social interaction in terms of the open area and the facilities and concern. Now based on that, one of the major what I say dimension of the cooperative housing is the variety. Since here in the decision making process various peoples from the diverse background are available and they provide their opinions and comments and take part on the decision making bodies, the planning and the design itself becomes very crucial. I will just show or share with you few examples through which you can understand and appreciate that how the cooperative housing planning and design can be diverse, and it can throw a challenge also, though it has a lot of advantage what we discussed. In this example we can see that this is basically 8 member cooperative. So 8 member cooperative has the built development, like said ground floor will be devoted for the parking, and the upper 4 floors will be given 2 units per floor, so that within the 4th floor you can accommodate 8 units. So in this particular example we can see that a different type of mechanism having 3 bedroom, all these 2 bedroom rooms are having 3 side open, which was the one of the basic requirement of the particular cooperative, and some of the bedrooms are having flexibility like this of having continuity with the dining area or the living area, so that can be used flexibly either as a bedroom or as a extension of the living areas. In the next example you can see that this is the core area, that is the staircase and the lift lobby, but these 2 units are not identical. This particular cooperative, they wanted to have little more extra facilities in the west facing units. This is the west facing units, this is the east facing units. So, in the west facing units, this balcony and this kitchen service balcony was given as a kind of a additional facility than the east facing unit. So, that is how within the design a designer can create some kind of variety to satisfy every unit, to satisfy every member, but at times it can be a little more challenging also. In this example you can see that the 2 units are divided like this. This is one unit, this is another unit. Usually in the previous examples the units are divided like that, but here this particular cooperative wanted to have their units divided in this fashion, because the front road is there in this direction. So, they wanted to have a frontage of from both the unit. So, keeping that in mind, this kind of design options were possible, so that from the road both the units can get some kind of frontage and the visual connectivity. At the same time they will have the main entrance from the core area and some secondary entrance to the bedroom. So, I am not going into much details of the design aspect, but I am giving you some glimpses of the design dimensions or the planning dimension, which will tell you, or which will be easier to understand that how diverse and how challenging could be the design of the cooperative housing. Now, as a result of this strategy at the planning level or the strategy level, what was the outcome of this particular example of New Town Kolkata? So, we saw that the response is huge, like if the number of cooperative plot is 1, there is application by the cooperative like more than 8 or 10. So, for one particular residential plot there are possible takers of the cooperative plot like 8 to 10 numbers. So, government had to advertise again and again to satisfy the housing demand and to create more number of cooperative plot, because the spontaneous development of the cooperative societies were more in number. That is the first response. The second which is basically a reason, the land was provided through a transparent lottery system, so that people are convinced that okay, they will get the legitimate housing plots. So, because of that the response was also very nice. Buildings have been constructed in the phase 1, the remaining buildings are being constructed. Another factor in the cooperative housing that though the objective is to frame the community, but there are examples and the instances that few of the cooperative members they are also selling it out to the market, but one condition or the precondition of the reselling of the cooperative housing plot is that if you want to resell the plots or resell the flats, you have to take the permission from the cooperative. So, even then the transfer of the ownership by reselling of the units is also existing. Another part is very important, these cooperative housings are affordable for MIG and LIG than the market rate. This we discussed before also. Here also we have experienced the same thing. The market rate for the middle income group and the lower income group is much higher than the construction cost and the rate of the cooperative housing, because the other projects, the profit elements are there. Because of the profit elements, naturally the final price will be much more higher than the cost of the housing developed by the housing cooperative. So, considering this feedback and this response and the experiences, our challenge is to the lack of what are the challenges. Let us discuss some of the challenges that we face. Even the cooperative housing offers many advantage and many fruitful outcomes like community development. So, one of the major challenges are if the cooperative is very large like 30 to 60 or 50 or more than 100. So, there may be lack of cohesiveness. If the cooperative is very small like 8 member, 10 member or 7 member, there are enough cohesiveness and you can definitely take out the decision and you can involve them in the decision making process, but if it is a very large it becomes challenging. So, that is the first challenge or the barrier. From the user side, from the people side, one of the problem of the barrier of the cooperative housing is that they cannot transfer the unit until unless the cooperative gives the permission or allows the transfer, whereas in the privately developed group housing it is much more easier. You can purchase a house, you can purchase an apartment, and next day if you want to sell it out, if you want to sell it out during your crisis period or during your any emergency, you can do it. But in the cooperative housing also you can do it, but definitely you have to take the permission and that can take some time from the cooperative. Another part is that there is no choice or customization on the allotment of the unit, because the allotment of the unit is through the lottery. In the privately developed group housing projects, if you purchase a flat in the very early stage, you will be given the 100% or the maximum amount of choices and you can choose your apartment, choose your house from the options. But here, since everybody is the member of that particular cooperative, everybody will get the equal opportunity, equal priority. That is why the allotment is done through the lottery. But yes, even if you do not get the choice to take the particular unit for your own purpose, definitely you can enter, you can involve yourself in the decision making process, so that even if you get the any apartment which is not prioritized by you, that also becomes livable, that is also not very bad. So, that kind of option is possible, but yes, the allotment you do not get any particular choice to select a particular unit which is possible otherwise in the privately developed group housing. Then another challenges basically in the design is the how you can maintain an equity and the equilibrium across the unit design. I showed some of the examples where you have found that the unit designs could be variable, because some member can opt out or some member can give the priority that like we have seen that the west facing plot, or maybe based on the vertical positioning they may opt out for different type of unit design and configuration. So, it is possible that as a planner and designer you might have to develop few more options of the unit design and the clustering of the buildings. So, that is possible. So, it may be kind of challenges for the cooperative housing. At the same time it can give you a different challenges in terms of design and the planning, because if the building is done by the private developer, we do not make so many alternatives or so many options within the same building or same building block, but here you might have to do those kind of option and those kind of exploration. The another challenge is the design decision making by the members takes time and multi-directional. I told that since the group is primarily heterogeneous, even if they are formed from a spontaneous cultural commonality, but the decision making at times may take time, and for that you need to have a streamlined decision making process for the strategy level, planning level and the design level. And another challenge is that since the end users are fragmented, there is no end user of common type, there are various diverse categories of the end users. So, bringing or achieving end users sometimes may be troublesome, sometimes may be more challenging. So, next lecture we will discuss the institutional and rental housing, how it is the institutional and rental housing are also very important typologies to offer the community and the affordable housing. So, before I conclude, let me summarize quickly what we discussed. Today we discussed the aspects of the cooperative housing. The cooperative housing are nothing but the housing done by the housing cooperatives. the housing cooperatives are formed by the people spontaneously, then those are registered under the state act, then they get the land, construct their building and occupies it. Secondly, we told that since they are involved in the decision making process, they are more attached to the building, they are more attached to the decision making process, and as a result the more community feeling is there in the community in the cooperative housing. Third, we discussed that it is much more affordable than a privately developed group housing, because in the privately developed group housing the developer always keeps their profit element, but here you are the developer, you are the member, you are the end user. So, whatever is the project cost is there, that is the final price. Secondly, sometimes government provides the plot in a subsidized or little lesser price to the people, keeping in the mind that they will promote or they will encourage the cooperative housing. So, from both respect, building and the land, the cooperative housing become really an affordable option for the people. Then we discussed the diverse diverse dimensions of the cooperative housing planning, and we mentioned that it is a challenge for the planners and the design to accommodate the diversity within the planning, within the planning and the design level, but if you can address that challenge, address that challenge at every level, definitely cooperative housing is one of the best option which offers the affordable housing. At the same time, it offers the community development within a very quick time, within 1 year or 2 years. So, with this we conclude this session. In the next session we will discuss the institutional and rental housing. Thank you.